welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to add a CAPTCHA to an ASP.NET MVC website. A CAPTCHA is a program that allows us to tell whether somebody that's entering values into our site is either a human or a computer. The CAPTCHA product I'm going to be using here is called the ReCaptcha. It's a free product. It's very easy to use, very straightforward. And in order to use it, the only thing you have to do is register for an account in order to get your public and private key. I've already gone ahead and registered an account for this demo today, and I've already downloaded the assemblies. If you'll need to do this, and go ahead and do that before you get started. Once you've downloaded the assemblies, just add a reference to the ReCaptcha.dll class. What I like to do when I add a new third-party assembly to my project is take a look at an object browser. And if I take a look at the ReCaptcha, I see that there's three classes: CAPTCHA Control, Response, and Validator. Now, having looked through the API documentation, I know that the control is what actually renders our CAPTCHA for display on the screen. I know that the validator is what is actually used to validate the input based on the user's entry against the CAPTCHA value, and the response is what is returned from the validate method on the validator. Now that we understand the assembly at the high level, let's take a look at how we can add this to our site. Now I'm going to do this in true MVC fashion. I'm going to create an extension method to render the CAPTCHA on the screen, and I'm going to create an action filter that will do the validation of our CAPTCHA for us. So the first thing we need to do is actually create the extension method. I want to actually render this on the screen. In order to prevent a bunch of fat fingering, I'm going to copy and paste the code here. Now I created a method here called generate CAPTCHA, and I've made it an extension of the HTML helper class. Now the first thing you need to do is create an instance of your CAPTCHA control. And the two important pieces of this are the public and private key. These are the keys that are given to you from the website when you sign up. You'll then need to just create an instance of your HTML text writer, and then call CAPTCHA control.render and provide it the text writer so it can render all the HTML output to the writer. And then I'm just going to return that value back to the user. Now that we have this extension method created, let's actually add it to our site and see what it looks like. And let's run this and see what happens. If all goes well, I should have a CAPTCHA on my screen. And I do. I have the black. I have told it to use the black glass theme. There are 4 or 5 themes that come with the CAPTCHA. By default, it uses the red theme, and you can obviously create your own themes if you want as well. So great, we have this being able to be rendered on our screen, so we actually now need to implement the logic to validate the CAPTCHA. I mentioned earlier that we're going to do this with a action filter. I've already got the action filter stubbed out, and now I need to actually code it. And again, I'm going to copy and paste in order to prevent fat fingering. Now let's take a look at this. Now I've created two private strings up here, challenge field and response field. When the CAPTCHA is rendered on the screen, it's going to give you a text box. And in that text box is the challenge field. And there's also a response field. Is the response field. And in the challenge field is basically an encrypted value that is the output or the expected value that somebody typed in. And this is going to be used to validate. The first thing you need to do is grab those values out of the form object. And then I'm going to create an instance of my validator. I'm going to provide the private key again, provide the IP address of the current machine. The reason for this is because typically the CAPTCHA key is registered to a particular domain. So this is a way for them to track that information. I'm then going to provide the challenge and the response information and let the validator validate. And I'm going to then call validate right there. Now, because we're using this as an action filter, I actually want to pass in the response into my controller action. And in order to do that, I'm going to add an action parameter on my filter context that contains my valid response information. And I'm going to call it CAPTCHA valid. Now in order to use this, I need to go over to my controller and add 2 things. One, I need to add the attribute for CAPTCHA validator, This will actually allow the MVC framework to intercept this action call and perform the validation. And then I'm going to create a boolean called CAPTCHA valid. This is the property or the parameter that will be set inside of my validator to let me know if the entered text was valid or invalid. And then obviously once you're inside your controller action, you'd want to do something like, if it's invalid, show them, provide some message back to the user and return. And if it's not invalid or if it's valid, continue processing as normal. We're not going to really go over that in this demo as all that logic is unique to your business situation. Well, now that I've added my controller action or made the change to my controller action, I've added the validator. Let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. Let me bounce back over here real quick. I want to put a breakpoint in my validator. Now I'm going to provide a valid value right now, and I'm going to hit submit. And as expected, my controller action was hit, and I can step through here. And I can see that my challenge value is this big encrypted value, which is what it should be. This is the value that represents the text in the CAPTCHA. And then my response is what I added, which Evans. I'm going to call the validator and get back a response, and sure enough, it is valid. Now I'm going to bounce to my controller method, and you'll see that it actually populated my CAPTCHA valid parameter for me correctly. In this case, I'd probably go ahead and continue processing and do something. Now, what happens if I provide an invalid value? Move our breakpoint down here. I get a valid is false. Well, it'll still let me continue on to my controller action. My parameter is now set to false. And here's where I would do my error condition logic and return back some message to the user or take whatever appropriate action. And I would either return back to the main screen or I'd go somewhere different. So there you go. In about 5 or 6 minutes, we were able to implement the ReCaptcha plugin within an MVC application. We've taken a look at how we can create an extension method that will actually render the control. We've then taken a look at how you can create an action filter to perform the validation. And then last but not least, we actually modified our controller action in order to use the validator and accept the parameter to let us know whether it's valid or invalid. So I hope you learned something today. Until next time.